Good morning. I'm Verla Ensko, House District 56, Orange County. We're here today to talk about Citizens United and the majority of voters in America and across the United States and in North Carolina. A great majority of people want money out of politics. For Democrats, 85% of Democrats, 81% of Republicans, and 78% of independents think that there should be limits on how much money corporations can give to in elections. 90% of people with incomes over $100,000 support that position. So we've been trying to deal with this issue for many times, and this year we have an interesting approach. Avram Friedman is here from the Canary Coalition, and he has proposed that we pass a bill to put a referendum on the ballot in the November election, November 2018 probably, that would let people North Carolinians actually vote on whether they wanted Congress to pass, to repeal Citizens United. We hope we'll be able to get this bill passed and get a referendum before the people and let the people decide. This is an issue for the people. We know that a great majority of the people support repealing Citizens United. We'd like to allow the citizens of North Carolina to speak out on that issue through their vote. So this would also help pull people to the polls for many other reasons. So it's a good bill for many reasons. We're going to have Avram Friedman is going to start off from the Canary Coalition. Senator McKissick is here to speak. Annie Butzner from Transylvania County NAACP is here, and Chrisberg from Hendersonville NAACP. So I'll turn it over to Avram Friedman. Thanks.
Good morning, North Carolina.
Good morning.
My name is Avram Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Canary Coalition, one of the 21 partnering organizations in North Carolina, the We the People campaign. I'd like to begin by thanking the primary legislative sponsors of the We the People Act, House Bill 453 and Senate Bill 354, Representative Verla Ensko, William Richardson, Amos Quick, Senators Van Dyne, Floyd McKissick, and Valerie Foushee, and the co-sponsors Representative John Ager, Kelly Alexander, John Autry, Cecil Brockman, Deb Butler, Susan Fisher, Pricey Harrison, Yvonne Holly, Greg Meyer, and Bobby Richardson. You are our heroes. Thank you. When money was defined by the Supreme Court as a form of free speech protected by the First Amendment, our democracy was immediately imperiled because it meant that those who have the most money could speak with greater amplitude and frequency than those who don't have those financial resources. It meant elections could be bought and sold to the highest bidder. It meant the principle of one person, one vote no longer ruled in the American political system. It was now $1, one vote, and those with the most dollars were now entitled to overwhelm the process with their economic influence. When the Supreme Court ruled that corporations are people with constitutional rights, it vastly diminished the rights and constitutional powers of real human beings who cannot compete with the power and influence of corporate wealth. But money is a form of property. It is not a form of speech. And a corporation is a type of business structure. It is not a person. The corporate form of business structure is a useful, even essential tool used by civilization to perform tasks that require limited liability. Legal contracts often refer to corporations metaphorically as people for the purpose of assigning responsibility to a legal entity within the contractual agreement. But the corporate money-influenced U.S. Supreme Court has, through a series of ill-conceived 5-4 decisions, turned this metaphor into a legal reality by claiming that corporations have the same constitutional rights as natural people. It will take a constitutional amendment to overturn these decisions and reinstitute the basic democratic principle that our system of government is run of, by, and for the people. Whether the issues important to you are related to economics, social justice, or environmental justice, whether it's about women's rights, labor rights, indigenous rights, the plight of the poor and low-income people, climate change, water, clean water, the availability of healthy foods, the right of all people to have health care coverage and affordable medicine, the right of all people to have the option for an affordable, debt-free public higher education, whether your issue is about voting rights or fair redistricting in our state, regardless of which issues are your priorities, the issue of getting corporate money out of politics is the key to addressing all these and other issues, because until we do, our local, state, and federal governments will continue to reflect the needs of corporate interests rather than the needs of real people and the public interest. The We the People Act, introduced by these legislators, will allow North Carolinians to vote and send a loud message to the U.S. Congress that we want this new U.S. constitutional amendment. If H. 453 and S. 354 pass, we'll have that opportunity and we'll become the 19th state to send that message to Congress. There are those who will ask why we are bothering to introduce this legislation now at a time when the political climate of the state in Raleigh would appear to make it so unlikely to pass. To those people, I'd like to invoke the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who addressed this question to the people within his movement during his time. He said, "We are not thermometers here to measure the temperature. We are thermostats here to change the temperature." Let's make this happen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm State Senator Floyd McKissick. I represent Durham and Granville counties in the state Senate, and I want to recognize Senator Terry Van Dyne, who's here also from Buncombe County, one of the primary co-sponsors of this bill. Of course, this bill is straightforward. It simply allows the citizens of the state of North Carolina in a referendum to express their opinion about the Citizens United case. Citizens United case was a very serious decision. That decision has led to a flood of dark money into political campaigns here in North Carolina and across the United States. You're seeing literally millions and millions of dollars coming into campaigns for specific causes and specific issues and specific candidates, and we don't know who the donors are. Only thing we know is their agenda. And frequently that agenda is to undermine and circumvent the will of voters. And that's something that we should all be deeply concerned about. Why? Because a democracy is based upon voters going forth and being able to cast their ballots for candidates of choice. But when you have unlimited campaign contributions coming in on one side, whether it's through the Koch brothers, whether it's through Americans for Prosperity, whatever the name a group may be known by in that campaign, it has the ability to silence the capacity of candidates to get their message out, to communicate with potential voters, to allow the issues to come to the forefront, as opposed to the issues to be silenced through the donors who are not disclosed. I had the privilege of speaking a few years ago before a Senate committee. Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont invited me to come up to Washington. That day, Senator Harry Reid spoke, and followed by Senator Mitch McConnell. I was next on that agenda to speak of the impact that dark money has had on campaigns here in North Carolina in trying to distort our races. It was shortly after Robin Hudson, a Supreme Court justice. Her candidacy was almost torpedoed by dark money flooding into this state. Fortunately, she won. But that doesn't always happen. So often, it's the one with the deepest pockets, with the dark money from the unlimited, undisclosed donors that are having significant impacts on our campaigns and our races. The laundry list is limitless. The impacts are profound. But most importantly, it's up to us as citizens of North Carolina to voice our objection to having these corporations identified and recognized as people. And it's up to us as a country to pass a constitutional amendment that restores the status quo before Citizens United. Because if we're unable to do so, the political integrity of our democracy is at risk. Thank you.
I'm Senator Terry Van Dyne. I represent District 49, Buncombe County, the city of Asheville. And I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that's because I believe in the democratic process. And I don't think there is anyone, Republican or Democrat, that doesn't agree that Citizens United has corrupted that process. When I go door to door campaigning, people frequently will tell me, what difference does it make whether I vote? That's the kind of cynicism that Citizens United has engendered, because special interests now have an outrageous amount of influence in the democratic process. So I was very pleased to be a co-sponsor of this bill, and I am very grateful for you for being here to cover this very important issue. Thank you very much.
Kim Stennon.
Hi, my name is Annie, and I'm representing the NAACP of Transylvania County. I'm a veteran nurse. In the 30 years as a clinical nurse specialist, I have been witness to the expanding, ever-expanding growth of corporate money in healthcare. There's corporate influence through representatives on important boards that should be entirely public. An example of this in North Carolina, corporate influence on the Penalty Review Committee for state violations in adult care homes and long-term care has just been eliminated. In the last summer, the Review Committee for State Violations was totally eliminated. This has resulted in lowering the standards of care for us and for everybody that we love. We need to lessen corporate influence everywhere, but particularly in healthcare.
I'm Chrisberg. I'm with the Henderson County chapter of the NAACP, and basically I'm here as a reporter for the situation in Henderson County. I have a friend who retired recently from the county schools after 30-odd years as a teacher. He tells me that the political situation in Henderson County is one he's never encountered before. Let me explain. We have at this moment a women's group that started after the march, the day following the inauguration, which now has about 700 members and does weekly political protests in front of our historic courthouse. We have another group that on every week generates about 600 to 700 postcards on political issues. They are meeting at a local brewery. This is a new form of voice for Henderson County. There are other groups that have weekly meetings and various political actions, none of which existed last year. How is this happening and why is it happening? I believe it has to do with the problem we have in getting public accountability for the actions of government. And a referendum to make the voices of voters heard more loudly seems to me basically the primary thing that groups like this and the events we are seeing happen, and this is a great way to address it and bring more people into our political process, get people engaged in this communal aspect of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. People for the American Way stated that groups federally registered outside of North Carolina account for 90% of all the outside spending from outside groups that comes into the state for House races. It really isn't right for groups that aren't even part of our state to have so much influence over our local and state elections. So we'd like to take questions if there are any at this time from reporters. Anyone have any questions?